Okay, so we are live with another professional water cooler chat. And Catherine, these water cooler chats are something I've started around March of 2020 for various reasons related to wanting to continue to network and have interesting conversations with people that I might have passed in a co-working situation or whatnot. And it's just progressed towards just continuing to have conversations with people. So thank you so much for joining. Can you please introduce yourself?
Sure, my pleasure. Thank you for the invitation. My name is Katherine Brown, and I am a speaker and author and sales trainer. My firm is called Extra Bold Sales, and I have worked with all different kinds of for profit and not for profit organizations. My most common client is a professional services company or a product company who sells business to business. Those are my most common. Um, Leaders that I work with. But my book, which is called How Good Humans Sell, has sales principles that have transcended, for me, a shocking number of industries. And so I think we can come up with some things today that will be a little bit of service to anyone who sells about across just about any kind of platform.
Awesome, awesome. And for those who are joining, if you have any questions at all, please do leave them in the comments. I say this all the time that I screen people for approachability and friendliness. So, Catherine is definitely someone that you can reach out to directly. And something I will say is you came to me by way of recommendation. I've been a Story Brand fan since 2017. I think 2018, and I was in a group and I said, "Hey, do you have like a recommendation for a sales coach to who's also familiar with Story Brand?" Because it was like this was I think last it was some months ago. And that's when I first started reaching out to you and asking you like all these different questions. And I love how you did it. You were like, you know what, it would be easier if you were like in my group or something like that. You said, I think this would like all be easy. And it was easier. So for those who have like a group coaching situation and, there are, if you feel as though someone will be better served in your group, just go ahead and let them know that. Because I think that's what I did like that day or the next day or something like that. So I should have been there a long time ago because I've been binging and it just would have made sense to join a
Oh,
while
well,
ago.
thank you. Thanks for
Yeah.
saying that. If it's okay, Amelia, too, I would say, just for those that don't know what StoryBrand is, I'll just explain super, super
Oh,
quick.
mhm.
There is a marketing training framework that is a 7-part framework that teaches you to really uncover what problem it is you address for someone through a series of questions. And there are these 7, it's almost like 7 buoys that you walk through where you map out the customer problem. And there's a book called Building a Story Brand by Donald Miller that came out about I guess no, it was about 2018, right? It's like it came out about 2018, and there've been some other materials that have come around that, but I decided to invest in that for myself. And I got in that community, even though mostly marketing agencies are people who are certified guides. But I decided to go through some formal training because, and I think that'll lead us to our topic that you wanted to talk about today. But when I ran a cold calling company, when I helped people come up with their scripts for lead generation, there were so many things about the Story Brand method that appealed to me because you are making sure that you lead with the problem you solve and not how you help. And people often inverse that. And what happens is if you're not careful, you end up presenting. You end up talking about your own product or service too much and basically, being boring, even though you don't mean to be. And there were so many things about the way StoryBrand was suggesting that people write that was consistent with the lessons I'd learned as a professional lead generator when I ran this boutique telemarketing firm. And so it was so compatible. I was like, oh, I think I want more training in that. And that is how I got in that community. So it was awesome.
Awesome. So we have like the storytelling, permission based, leading with the problem, their problem approach to having conversations related to value and sales. So that's just attracted me for so many reasons to your community. And so the topic that I like to talk about, and thank you for the like, I can see that. And if you're joining me, please say hello. And if you have a question for Catherine, let us know. But when it comes to crafting, your first, cold outreach, because that's thing, a challenge a lot of us are thinking about. Reaching out to somebody you don't have a previous relationship with, um, out of curiosity, or not even curiosity, but letting them know that, hey, they have a problem that you can solve. It's like, one can get that, but like, as far as like how that translates into real life, I like to hear from you, like, what are some best practices that people should think about, when they are writing their first, maybe not their call script, but a framework, like,
Mhm.
their talking points. That's the word. I was trying to think of the story brand word, but the talking points.
Sure.
Or yeah, let's start there.
Okay, so let me give a couple of qualifiers just so that the audience makes sure that we mean the same thing. So um, there are a lot of ways you can initiate with someone from scratch, that for the purpose of eventually getting on a Zoom call or a Teams call or a phone call or face to face. And when I'm talking about generating new leads and initiating, I'm talking about whether you email first, in mail first, send an email with a video, cold call and have a call with or without a voicemail as your first message. All of those in general, I'm talking about that's you taking the initiative first, as opposed to what's awesome as we build up our marketing is that we get more referrals and we get inbound leads and people say, hey, I saw your video and I'd like to know more, right? That's the holy grail that we're all working toward. Right? But probably for a long time, and certainly in large companies, you will also have target accounts that you want to work in. And even with the very best marketing execution, not everyone can always see that, and the salesperson may still have to initiate and start the relationship themselves from scratch. And that's kind of where we find ourselves in this conversation, right, Amelia? Is that what you're thinking?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so let me address the question first, like what are some best practices for doing that? Let's reverse engineer, and let me say first what doesn't work, because it's getting a lot of smack talk on LinkedIn right now, and I think it's well deserved, but I don't think people intend to do a bad job. So let's talk about like why certain things aren't working. If you initiate either through email or in-mail or Facebook Messenger or whatever is your mode of outreach, and you have um, basically the whole first paragraph is you describing how your company's services work, and there's one little sentence about the problem you solve further down in, right? So, and business owners like you feel like this is helpful, or business owners like you feel like X, like kind of buried in there. And then do you want to jump on and have a quick call to talk about this more? The answer most of the times is going to be no, I don't. Because I still, even though you think you've explained in that first, and I say you rhetorically, right? But even though we think we've explained sufficiently how we help, there's not enough love that's gone in the love bank where I feel I feel confident that even a 15 to 20-minute call is going to be valuable enough to me, because you haven't built enough trust by what you've shared. So talking mostly about yourself with a call to action right away to jump on a quote quick call. I just don't have enough hours in the day for all the invitations to quick calls I get. And so what I do when those happen is I reply and say, I would be happy to eventually have that call. Could you tell me more where I could follow you, how you've solved the problem for people like me, or give me some additional content so that I have a better sense of your authority in this subject. And I just can't tell you how few of those messages actually get a reply back.
Mm. Awesome. So, what do you suggest to somebody as far as like I know that there's like lots of things that you can say. There's sometimes a wanting to know, I guess, the magic or the special phrase to say, if I just say this, everybody will, listen and say yes. But give me like an example of like what to the first outreach email, what
Mhm.
might you suggest like that sound like or look like?
So that is a great question. So because we've already mentioned story brand, I'll reference it again. And then for people who do not know what that is, I'm going to explain it in a different way. In story brand language, they have something called a one-liner. And the one-liner is taken it's a term that comes from from movie scripts, where in a few sentences you describe the whole plot of the movie quickly. It's a little bit of a confusing term because it's not one sentence, even though it's called a one-liner. And so in sales language, what in business to business sales languages with account executives and account managers, we call those value propositions, your value proposition. So what I would say is every single time you possibly can, you want, besides your greeting, you want the very first message to be coming, the very first sentence to be one of two things. You either begin the sentence with something that lists a positive outcome that you know people like your prospect are looking for. And then you go on in the next sentence to list how you help with that, or you list a problem they're having. And I really like to mix it up and list both the outcome and positive benefit of where they're trying to go, as well as a problem statement, because people are pretty evenly divided. There's research that shows that about 50% of the population is what social psychologists call prevention oriented, and about 50% of the population is what's called promotion oriented. So some people are more motivated to take action to prevent harm, and others are more oriented toward a dream, positive outcome and dream of where I'm trying to go. And because we don't know that much about the person we're prospecting, we don't know which will work. So I try both of them pretty evenly. And the key takeaway, Amelia, is that the first sentence, literally, it needs to not start with I. It needs to start with the future desired state. So it might be something like, just making this up off the top of my head, busy business owners like you, Katherine, are always looking for ways to maximize their time and make sure that they're working on only the tasks that they uniquely are suited to do. However, when running a small business, many business owners get caught in and pulled back into minutia that is actually work they could delegate if they would slow down long enough to create a plan. My firm, ABC, has mastermind groups of people, who are just like you, who share best practices. And I have this quick video course of how I help businesses scale from this to this, or whatever your offering is, right? I'm making it up off the top of my head. But you notice that I had a 2-part, what is the challenge you might be experiencing, before I went on and described how I help as the seller. If you do that uniformly, I call it the them before me principle. If you make sure you are not the subject of the first sentence, that will get you so far on people continuing to listen, whether this is a voicemail, a live conversation, or reading. It will get you so far because people like to read about themselves. And I'll say one more thing and then I'll give you a chance. Like, I think that people are scared to do this because they're scared that they'll guess wrong. And they think, well, what if I name a problem that's not actually the problem you have? But to that, I would say, take a stand, take a chance, take a stand. Because if I'm a nice person, and if I see you trying and you're close but not quite right, I will engage with you. I will say, well, actually, I don't quite struggle with this. I have a virtual assistant who helps me with blah, blah, blah. But I'll tell you what really is a challenge is X. And I'll volunteer information if you win my trust, because it looks like you've done a little bit of research about me. Does that make sense?
No, it completely does. I think I heard Donald Miller talk about it makes like it's calling the problem or naming the problem before recommending the medication. Like if you just walk up to somebody and say, "Hey, would you like some Advil?" It's like that's weird on so many different levels. But if that person was in CVS, if they were in the aisle where there's a headache medicine and they have, maybe they're holding their head or they just, and then you were to say, hey, here's this, thing over here, just the context is Well, in the way they sort of named the problem with all that stuff, but how
Yeah.
you did it, I misexplained what you already explained beautifully. Um, but
Thanks, Amelia. Well, let me say something else about that, and I
yeah,
saw we had a comment too.
yeah,
I think too that I think that most of us, not all, but most of us, even if we're selling for a really large enterprise, you have a certain number of accounts that have been assigned to you. And in B2B complex sales, people usually have the luxury, sellers usually have the luxury of taking a few minutes to research before you have to do specific target account outreach. Now, you might also have email marketing and these big marketing campaigns going on alongside of you, which is awesome. And hopefully you do. But I just can't tell you how far it goes with me as a buyer. If you take 5 minutes and click on activity posts on LinkedIn and read about something that I've been posting about and tie it to that. like what is it, what's the time worth to you to take a few minutes to have a higher percentage of people saying yes than send out, generic messages in mass? I think that's the fallacy of selling, where people say it's just a numbers game. I think that is a really unhelpful, even dumb thing to say, just to be frank, because you can have really bad copy, very uncompelling value proposition, and do it in large numbers, and you will not make very much progress. And so if we have excellent copy, a strong value proposition, and where we're able, and when we have that luxury inside our company organization to take a few minutes and make something highly personalized, you're just going to so dramatically increase your uptick of who's willing to talk to you.
awesome, awesome. Thank you so much for that. Dr. Cleveland said, I heard you mention you could do a video along with an email to outreach. I think was it you? Me? Maybe I've said it sounds like something I would say too. But I heard you mention that you could do a video along with an email to outreach. You also mentioned making sure one sharing more about the service. How do you use the value proposition when the type of service being delivered might be new to them without information overload? So, Dr. Cleveland, are you saying, did you understand it? But also, Dr. Cleveland, are you saying like the value proposition, like you're introducing like a new idea, like a net new idea? This might not
Mm.
be something that they necessarily have been looking for, searching for, and the service might be, yeah, new to them without, yeah, without overwhelming them. Like it's like a complicated thing. Yeah.
Yes, I actually, feel like and please, Dr. Cleveland, tell us if this isn't what you're saying, but I think I'm appreciating what you're saying. I feel like I come up against this all the time because as a professional sales trainer, good, she's saying that's correct. As a professional sales trainer, there's just a lot of wonderful sales trainers out there and a lot of sales training systems. And so, the question that's a fair question is, why is there another book on selling, or why would I need to work with you, Katherine? Well, I have to have a long play in educating people about what's different. So if you were, for example, to, follow my LinkedIn post really closely, you'll see that I talk a lot about beliefs and mindset as an emphasis in my sales training. I also train on sales processes, and so do lots of other people. You see, so I expect to have to explain that a lot and invite people to follow me, share things multiple times. And so I think it also goes really to Dr. Lee Cleveland's question, and I think is also, how much do I share it first, and then how much do I have to continue to communicate? And I think that it's better to assume I'm going to have to give several pieces of content, and I'm going to have to frame my value proposition several different ways. I don't mean that the ultimate product you offer is a different solution, but you might have to talk about multiple reasons why there's a need for that and how that gets your buyer where they're trying to go. You might have to literally write that a number of different ways and keep pinging them. So actually just did a coaching call, Amelia, right before this, and I was talking to my client, and I said, you have two things you have to think about. What are the modes of outreach? So am I going to call and leave a message? Am I going to call and not leave a message? Am I going to send an email? Am I going to call again? Am I going to connect with them on LinkedIn? Am I going to connect with them on Facebook? Am I going to send an email with a video in it? We have all these options. Don't forget old-fashioned mail, right? I call those modes, MODES, the modes of communication. Then I have all the reasons I reach out. So am I inviting you to something? Am I explaining my value proposition a different way? Am I sending you a white paper? And we have all this freedom where we can mix up the modes and the reasons. And that's how we ask, give without literally repeating ourselves, is because we're rotating the way we ask as well as the reason for the outreach. Let me
Awesome.
know if that makes sense or if you have a question about that.
I think it does. Dr. Cleveland, feel free to reach out again or comment again. But what I heard from you in a way is something like I heard recently that, well, you said it, like how many, the percentage of buyers that have already done like their homework, like they've done their homework already. And I feel like I'm hearing like with the sharing the value proposition in a few different ways on a few different mediums, what you're doing is in a way almost setting the buying criteria. It's
Mhm.
like, if you have like this problem, or if you have this situation, or if you have this pain, or if you are trying to do this job, these are some things that might come up for you, or I don't know if it's a challenge for you, but it's the concept of like setting a buying criteria. Is that kind of sort of what you're doing, or is it something else completely?
Yes, you're allowing people to self-qualify. You're also, remember, we have half the population is prevention oriented and half the population is promotion oriented. So part of why we're mixing up our message with all the ways we help, and beginning that first sentence of whatever outreach it is with either a clear picture of the direction we suspect they're trying to go, or a specific problem that we know people like them probably struggle with. The reason we do that multiple ways is because we just don't know which is going to resonate. I mean, even when you have a tight sense of your persona, maybe by their demographics, generally it's this title and these size companies with this much revenue, people are still people, right? They have their basic disposition and their basic priorities at that moment. And so I still think that having multiple ways of varying your message helps you as the seller to touch people a number of different times, which you can do with confidence because we know people don't get all of our messages. They're so busy. And I mean, I have a case in point. I'm signing a speaker contract to speak up on something in the first quarter. And I woke up this morning and I was like, I haven't signed the speaker contract. And I mean, this is something I've been working on forever. And I'm just really busy. I've just got a lot going on. And so how much more are we going to have to reach out to people that, who don't know, love, and trust us yet? We're going to have to ask more than we think we are.
Awesome, awesome. Um, Can you touch on cold calling? Because we kind of did, but um, if you could give like practical advice, I'm very much into the practical, something somebody can listen now and then implement tomorrow.
Sure.
And you
Sure.
have an amazing book that people should absolutely get. But just to
Thank
close
you.
out, do you mind giving us a snap? Not necessarily, we're not talking any one call closes here. We're not asking to go through all of that, but just an initial call, like an invitation to a webinar. Like, say
Mhm.
somebody is like hosting a webinar or hosting an event, and they would like to, reach out and do calls to, people, blah, 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 to invite them to the webinar. Like, what might that sound like?
Sure. So a couple things that I'll use to frame this. I love the webinar example because that is actually a gift that is, in my opinion, a slightly easier call than setting a sales call. Most people are more nervous to try to set a sales call than they are to say, hey, we have this cool thing happening and we thought of you. So I think that's a lower bar in a lot of people's mind. Um, Let me say a couple things. One, I feel like because of LinkedIn, because of websites, because of services, list brokers, all these different things, it's so much easier to get people's contact information than it used to be. So the first question I would bring, I'm not avoiding answering your question. I'm going to answer your question, but I would raise the question by saying, you can make a decision case by case about whether calling first with no previous email is actually necessary. Sometimes it's important. Sometimes it's necessary. It's not as necessary as it used to be because it used to be really hard. Amelia. I mean, I've been doing this for 25 years and it was really hard to get in big companies. It's hard to get their email address. It's not as difficult as it was before. And so whenever you can call referencing that you previously have sent an invitation, or even that you are going after this call to tag them and make sure they see the LinkedIn event, right? Maybe you've created a LinkedIn event for your event. It's easy to do this multi-touch thing and reference that. So I would say, first of all, does it have to have the call first? It might not. If it doesn't, it's nice to present the value proposition with the invitation to the webinar, and then say, if we don't connect sooner, I'll call you Thursday and see if that's a better way to catch you. And then Thursday you call, and you're probably going to end up leaving a message. Okay, so first of all, do you have to cold call? Second, if you do, and when you do, you still start with the value proposition. So you would write a mini value proposition and you would lead the call with something like that. So just off the top of my head, I haven't practiced this, but in the case of the webinar, we would say something like, hi, John. So I'm probably gonna leave a voicemail. So I'm gonna model the voicemail. I'm gonna say, hi, John, Katherine Brown calling from Extra Bold Sales. I'm calling because we're having an event next Tuesday because many controllers in ABC types of companies have expressed that they're concerned about these things at the end of the year. We have this talk coming up for blah, blah, blah purpose. Here's what I'm going to do next. I'm going to send it. Look for this so it's at the top of your box. If you have any questions, here's how you contact me. And please go look for that email. If I don't hear from you and we don't connect by Monday, I'll try to catch you one more time and make sure that you know about this event. Something like that. That was off the top of my head. So
Awesome.
there's still a little more I in there that I would have liked. I would probably scope that out and really make sure I led with why should they care about this early on. But that idea of them before me, whenever you can, making, even in a voice message, making that first sentence be about them and not about me is the gold standard to work toward.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. So please share about your book. Please share about your community. Please share about how other people can follow you and get in your world and soak up all of your amazing goodness. I try to keep these to under like 20 minutes. We're at 26. So
Okay.
it was just so lovely. So how can
Thank
people continue
you.
to keep in touch? And I feel like, I don't know if I'm allowed to say that. Do you have like a workbook coming out too? Or did I make that up? Or
Yes,
yeah, just
well,
tell us
I
all the
do need
things.
to do that next year. I don't mind you
Okay.
mentioning it all. It is
Okay.
it is on it is on the to-do list. And so the best ways to get help right now are this. So I have you see here my wrong way. If you see my book here, it's a blue and white on Amazon. It's called How Good Humans Sell. And the subtitle is the B2B path, the proven path to B2B sales success. So How Good Humans Sell is the name. It's I've been told it's about a 2.5 hour read. It was only 8 chapters, but we talk about this idea of being a guide, and it's on paperback and Kindle. So those are the two ways you can read it right now. That is, Amelia, a lot of my more expensive sales training is crammed in the second half of that book. I mean, it starts with beliefs and then we build on processes. I give the template, I give the formula for the value proposition. I just walk people through. A lot of that's in there. There's also bonus sheets and a special URL that you can access simply by buying the book that has a lot of the material. So thank you for bringing that up. I do have a Wednesday group coaching every Wednesday live from 2:30 to 3:30 Eastern US time. We do live training on Zoom, and that's comprised primarily of business owners who are the seller in small businesses. Sales reps are also welcome to come. I have several in there as well, but this is live teaching and interacting with people in mastermind community. And then on my website, which is extraboldsales.com, EXTRABOLD sales.com, you see courses coming up. So you can sign up for actually live courses that I teach where I take people through a workbook of the curriculum and help improve mindset, reframe what you think about selling, and then build out some of these templates that we're talking about to use in your sales sequence.
Awesome, awesome. Well, I will be taking another look at those courses too, even though I'm soaking up all that I can inside. But thank you so much, Katherine. And like I say, I scream everybody for approachability. If you want to continue the conversation with Katherine, please reach out to her. And I'll just go ahead and say, like, if you find her asking her more than like a couple questions, just join one of her communities. It'll be better for everyone that way.
Thank you. Thank
And
you.
this was lovely. Well, thank you again. I look forward to staying in touch.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me as a guest. I appreciate you.